Happy Saturday. Thank you for watching this episode of What You Aren't Being Told by Mainstream Media here on America's New Clothes. Please like and share our page and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at the links in the description box below that I'll post up later on. Now let's get right into, as there are a lot of things to cover here since I didn't report since Thursday. I'll do my best to wrap this up in about 20 minutes, but the topics that I want to touch on are going to be Hunter Biden's laptop and the FBI, and how they're investigating or they're confirming a new investigation. Trump's supporting nuns, so nuns that supported Trump's attending a Trump rally in Ohio. Carlo Vigano, his letter to Donald Trump, spike in COVID-19 cases, and the recently released studies on the masks. Trump's Mideast peace success, SEAL Team 6 raid from this morning. Mary Claire magazine highlighting the many Black Americans that are running for office, but leave out one glaringly obvious deletion. And we'll get into the updated voter tallies in some of the key states. So let's begin. The DOJ yesterday confirmed through James Rosen that they have an open and active criminal investigation into Hunter Biden's laptop since 2019, but wouldn't say for what. So it could be for money laundering, sex trafficking, child pornography. We don't know. The interesting thing is that the FBI agent who's assigned to the case does focus on child pornography. So you can make up your own mind or, lead it to your own conclusion there. But, now all those pics of Joe sniffing young girls' hair and touching them inappropriately on the chest, pulling them, grabbing their arm, pulling them in close, begins to make sense a little bit more, and especially on the heels of knowing that his daughter, Ashley Blazer Biden, had a diary that was a whistleblower had found or whatever, or somehow got, that ended up in the wrong hands. And she writes about her quote unquote uncomfortable showers with dad when she was a child. She went through a lot of psychotherapy as well growing up. So the diary was probably either used in psychotherapy that maybe was left, and maybe in the raid that I'll get to in a minute into the psychotherapist of Hunter, maybe it was found there. I don't know, but anyway, it's been confirmed that the diary is hers. So the interesting part about this is just imagine, if you will, all right, in a parallel universe, that it was one of Trump's children who the DOJ had come out yesterday, 5 days before an election, and confirmed that there was an active, open criminal investigation just days prior to an American election where his father, their father, is running for the highest seat in the world. And you don't hear anything about it, right? Just imagine that for a second. That wouldn't happen, clearly. So you have to ask yourself then, which is really what America's Clothes is here for, right? So ask yourself, is there a major double standard in the media and in this country to keep you from knowing the truth? NBC, CBS, CNN, they've contributed no time to this story. To their credit, Good Morning America did indicate that there was, or did have a 2 to 3 minute segment on the laptop, and actually interviewed people in Ukraine to ask them, what do you think about all this? And to Good Morning America's credit, they're running the story. Why? They're preparing for what's about to happen, assuming that Joe Biden wins. So we can get to that on another show. So what we're trying to do here is bring those stories to you that you won't otherwise hear or see on mainstream media, because they don't want you to know. They're running cover for everybody that's on the liberal and progressive side, as we learned this week at the big tech censorship Senate hearing with Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey. It's amazing how dishonest these people are. Zuckerberg has a way of making you feel like, wow, he really knows what we're going through and understands it, and he's sorry. Jack Dorsey, I don't know how much Valium he was on or whatever, but man, he looks like a guy that is a homeless person in Venice. So I don't know, he knows there is nothing that's going to happen to him. The Senate hearing was all for show, drum up people that, they think they're going to get out support on, and push to the polls. Nothing's going to happen to these guys. And we can get to that in a minute. I'll cover about Robert Epstein. But they're never going to get to it. So it's just going to get swept under the rug, and the Ted Cruz's of the world get to grandstand and make some, nice videos for his reelection campaign in 4 years. but otherwise nothing's going to happen. So it was a sad array of just guys, again, grandstanding, but not really going anywhere. On moving from that, then you have going back to these nuns that were at a Trump rally last week on the 24th. So a guy named Peter Vroom, who's a nobody, but has maybe 5,000 followers or so on Twitter, he tweeted out on October 24th on his feed, and it's subsequently got over 20,000 comments. So what he did was just horrific, but he doxed these nuns. So his tweet was, and I quote, "The three nuns attending Trump's rally in Ohio today are from the Order of the Children of Mary in Cincinnati. Here's a comparison of their picture from the rally today without a face mask and a picture from their website. I'm not using their names." So he tries to use that as cover, being like, I'm not doing anything. I'm showing you who they are, right? You go do your investigation on your own, but I'm not saying their names. Then he obviously posted a pic of them. Now, you have to understand that this is going to happen and has been happening, if you've been paying attention, of the targeting of Christians and people of faith. This will be the priority for the progressive agenda going forward, as they hate organized religion, except somehow they're fine with Islam religion. So they only cry out and get upset when a mosque supposedly is attacked or spray painted, whatever. They don't really care when churches get burned, synagogues get burned, people of faith, Cuomo going out and targeting the Orthodox Jews in New York. If you haven't seen that, it's amazing. All these Orthodox Jews took to the streets basically in protest of Cuomo showing up at one of them's houses as they're having a gathering because they can't worship at the synagogues when shut down. So this is going to continue and get worse. The progressives believe that every atrocity known to man in the history of mankind has all been because of religion. They dismiss that just in the fact in the last 100 years, socialism, communism, fascism has killed more than every religious war ever waged. So, but I digress. So we just have to wake up. I mean, Democrats and Republicans, if you're a fence sitter and you're like, whatever, right? You're going to lose the battle. And when you lose the battle, there's no coming back from that. So if you do care about freedom and care about Jews being able to worship in a synagogue, Christians being able to worship in their church, Muslims being able to worship in their mosques, then you have to stand up and start taking a stand on this, because again, it's going to spiral out of control. And people will say, well, what about the black churches in the South that get burned? Ironically, what's interesting about that is most of them are done by Democrats, and some of them are black Democrats. So research your history, look at it, right? Understand that it's very rarely, if ever, do you hear and see an actual conservative or someone from the right going and burning down a black church or burning down churches and synagogues. So the targeting is coming from the left. This is where America needs to wake up. This progressive movement it's a cancer, and it's cultural Marxism. We can get into that in a second. So keeping it kind of on the religious front there, the former nuncio to the U.S. From the Vatican, a guy named Carlo Maria Vigano, wrote his second letter to Donald Trump. First one came back in June after the burning of the St. John's Church, by which two pastors, an Episcopalian, really kind of lashed out at Donald Trump for doing the photo op. The story behind that Bible, I'll link it, is amazing. The Bible that he used, yes, maybe he held it upside down or whatever, but understanding the story of that Bible for him it could bring a tear to your eye if you have a heart. But anyway, in this letter, he talks about what's called the Great Reset. The Great Reset is something that the World Economic Forum has been pushing. It's part of Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. Time Magazine just featured an entire magazine publication or entire edition to the Great Reset. They know that Joe Biden is the Trojan horse to get them there, to open that door. Trump stands in the way of that. Vigano recognizes that. He recognized back in June what the deep state was doing in all this rioting, all these protests, the virus, everything else, is to control you. So he talks about that. And he opens up the letter. I'm sorry. He opens up the letter and says, I am writing to you in the midst of the silence of both civil and religious authorities. May you accept these words of mine as the quote unquote voice of one crying out in the desert, which is a passage from Jonah 1:23. Now, what the Great Reset is they basically are going to mandate vaccines. They're going to mandate you get a digital ID, and they're going to basically mandate that you shut up and obey. It's to destroy America and capitalism across the world, which the UN's been trying to do through their climate change push for years now. 2 decades. So this is it. We're at that final stand right now. And if Trump stands in their way, how do they break it down, right? So if Trump does win, you're going to see again more massive impeachment trials, which is being set up already with all these bogus polls that it's going to claim cheating. They're going to try to time to cheating, so it's going to get out of control. No matter who wins, it's going to get out of control. So you're either going to have a meltdown on the left from the left, or you're going to have a meltdown from the left attacking the right and attacking Donald Trump after this. But Vigano writes, no one and I quote, no one up until last February would have ever thought that in all of our cities and citizens would be arrested simply for wanting to walk down the street, to breathe, to want to keep their businesses open, to want to go to church on Sunday. Yet now it is happening all over the world, even in picture postcard Italy. And he goes on to explain, how it's happening over there. He adds, and while the politicians are barricaded inside their palaces, promulgating decrees like Persian satraps, businesses are failing, shops are closing, and people are prevented from living, traveling, working, and praying. Yet these politicians in many countries have in mind a quote unquote great reset for the global economy, an economy which has been since 2008 struggling under colossal debts and supply chain stresses, a reset that Vigano says and warns will impose a coercive measure with which to drastically limit our individual freedoms and those of entire populations. So he goes on to conclude that the Great Reset is destined to fail because those who planned it do not understand that there are still people ready to take to the streets to defend their rights, to protect their loved ones, and to give a future to their children and grandchildren. He then goes on to tell that president is the man who the world looks to now that is standing against this looming Great Reset. I can attest to that. I talked to friends in Morocco. I talked to friends in Europe, even in Colombia and Peru, that seem to know, look, one, this whole COVID thing is a sham. We all know, yes, people are dying, but we know that it isn't as big of a deal as they're trying to make it out to be. People around the world are catching on to that. But also they've told me if Trump loses, the world is over. I mean, we will spiral out of control pretty quickly. And you can roll your eyes at that all you want. These are people who obviously live in some countries or, still in strict lockdown. But I've had conversations with them for the last 3 years who are pro-Trump into the point of them understanding that, yeah, I may disagree with him and how he talks and everything else, but I do understand he's a leader who gets things done. And they know that he's pro-American. And if America falls to the leftist progressivism, then the world's going to change dramatically and quickly. And they're right. So on that, then now you have what was reported yesterday as the highest spike of COVID cases, or the highest number total tally of COVID cases since the outbreak. Now, that's peculiar, of course, right? We're 5 days from an election. However, there's 0 flu cases, 0 pneumonia cases, and 0 influenza-like illnesses, ILI, as the CDC reports it. Amazing, right? 0. Now, why is that? Well, because the CDC, in their most recently released on their website information, they're now classifying everything as COVID-19. Now, what started off as coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, has now been looped into saying COVID-19 now encompasses all ILI. Anything that remotely, if you have symptoms of anything, you're classified as a COVID-19. Why? Because they need to scare the bejesus out of you. So voila, right? Yesterday, the Friday before the election, boom, hit a spike, right? Amazing. Now the mainstream media and the Sunday morning talk shows can go in and say to their viewers, look, 5 days before we go to vote, we had our highest case count on record. So remember that when you enter the booth. So they're trying to scare you, right? It's fear porn. I've been talking about this since I started this show. But what they're going to do is they're going to look to the Biden. They're going to tell you, look to the Biden-Harris plan, see how they would have handled the crisis. Well, what's interesting about that is if you read Kamala Harris's tweet from late last night, her tweet is, when Joe Biden and I are in the White House, we'll listen to the experts when it comes to public health, create a pandemic board that oversees testing, and make COVID-19 testing, treatment, and vaccines free for all Americans. Interesting. That's exactly what Trump and Pence have done. If I had messaged that out to you in January and it came from Mike Pence and said, when Trump and I are going to listen to the experts when it comes to public opinion, Fauci, or public health rather, Fauci, Birx, Redfield, create a pandemic board, created a task force, right? 2 days after the first virus case hit here, and making COVID-19 testing, treatment, and vaccines for free. Trump has been saying that for months. These people have no plan. These people don't know what the hell they're doing. No, sorry if you're an Obama or if you're a Biden, Kamala supporter, but based on what we know Biden's history to be from his previous 3 runs for president, they plagiarize, right? They're just stealing ideas. If you go to what Trump has done and look at everything he's done and then followed up a week, 2 weeks later, that's when Biden would come out and say, well, this is what I would have done. Well, dude, it was already done. So they're tricking you. And unfortunately, the media is not going to tell you, right? They're not going to go through the timeline, show you when Trump enacted something and when Biden said, well, this is what I would do. So, and if you go back and kind of, Monday morning quarterback all you want, the difficulty that they have is that they don't have a plan. They wouldn't have had a plan. And who knew what you could do, right? I mean, what you should do at that time. So, and you can get into, Trump didn't have a pandemic task force that was left over from the Obama administration or whatever. Well, we hadn't been hit with a pandemic, right? H1N1, right, which had 60 million cases. Again, keep in mind, even with the change in COVID-19 case count, we've only had 9 million cases. They had 60 million of H1N1. So before they get into lecturing people, they should have probably looked at their own record. So, but what's interesting too is, again, as I pointed out the other night, flu cases are down 98% around the world, 98%. So that leaves really one common sense conclusion here. You're being lied to, right? You're being jobbed and you're being lied to. Spain is catching on to this. And much of the world is catching on to this. Spain last night had a large group of people. You can go find it on Twitter, social media, where they stormed a row of police cars. The police cars end up driving off. They're scared crapless because all these people start running. Those cops were there to mandate curfew and quarantine of people not leave their certain sectors on a Friday night. So the cops got chased off. What's other interesting too is that Belgium, on a population weighted basis, posted a number yesterday that would be the equivalent of 720,000 cases here in the U.S. in one day. So what's interesting about that, though, is they had one of the hardest lockdowns dating all the way back to the early spring. They mandated masks. Yet they were one of the of any rich nation. They had one of the highest per capita death rates in COVID-19 or of COVID-19. So the two things that have been proven around the world not to stop the spread of this virus is lockdowns and masks. So yet I went to the store yesterday and there were probably 40 people, 50 people maybe that were in there in total. Dozens of people being obedient to the government, bowing to public shaming, wearing their masks. I entered the grocery store yesterday, seeing the mask required thing, sign on the door, walked right through. Nobody said anything to me, but I did get the looks, right? I was a lone person there. So I did get the looks of shame as people would pass me by. And I literally was within an inch I had my hands full, but I literally was within an inch of holding up my arms and just looking up at the ceiling and saying, freedom. God, would have felt so good. You have these people, I mean, again, they just obey their shepherd, right? They just do whatever they're told. Like, oh, I'm in a store. I don't want to be shamed. They're never going to let you out of that if you don't start turning against it. So make a choice and a decision that's best for you. Don't bow to public pressure. I can't stress that enough. I mean, what they're doing to us is unbelievable. We have given up so much of our rights in such a short period of time that if Biden wins and he's talked about mandating lockdowns again, the science would tell him, the economy is going to be crushed. You're going to be without a job, or many of you that are working in hourly jobs, or maybe working in rotational type jobs like hospitality, food service, whatever. You're going to be without a job. What are you going to do? Oh, don't worry. We're going to have the Great Reset. Read about the Great Reset. Great Reset's going to come in. They're going to give you universal income, wipe out your mortgage debt. Only thing is, you become a prison to the state. So you want to be a prisoner to the state, keep wearing your masks. On the topic of masks, the Federalist had an article yesterday that goes through with links all over it that you can find, and link to of different mask studies, different articles done in the countries talking about what they've done. And it posts 12 graphs from around the world, or of countries from around the world, showing when their mask mandates were implemented and what the case count did after that. In every single case, it would dip a little bit and then kind of bottom out and then spike. Again, mask mandates and lockdowns remained in place. So if mask mandates and lockdowns work, why would you have a spike in cases? it makes no sense. People are locked in their homes. Shouldn't that kill the virus? That's what we were told early on, right? 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into what are we at 21 weeks now, 22 weeks we're going on. Again, got to wake up. But the media is going to keep showing you the case count and scaring the bejesus out of you. Meanwhile, the death count is low, and the IFR is at like 1.4%, I think, for all populations, right? All ages. So I'll link to that. You can read on that study as well. Moving on, Mideast peace agreements or Mideast agreements. For those who don't know, that it hasn't been covered on the Sunday shows or on mainstream media, Trump has made monumental history by getting Middle East countries to sit down and recognize Israel, and they're opening diplomatic relationships with them. Sudan, UAE, Bahrain have all signed agreements, and Trump, I think, tweeted out today that he says Saudi Arabia is close to being next. So, because of his efforts on this, he's been nominated for 4 Nobel Peace Prizes. Most people don't even know that, right? But Obama got one because he can go around and give a good speech. So he did nothing and won one. So many have said that he was going to go start world wars, and we're going to be in a nuclear war with North Korea in no time. He's essentially had Kim pretty much had his legs cut off from under him. He really doesn't do anything. Saber rattles a little bit, but doesn't do anything. You now have Israel being recognized and opening up their first flight with Bahrain in, I think, 10 years, 20 years, something like that, maybe longer than that. So what you're seeing is that with major help from Jared Kushner, he's done everything opposite of what his critics said he was going to do. Critics said he was going to put us into wars, bloodshed, all of these nations would revolt against us. Fortunately, what he's done is he's brought everybody together, right? Yeah, he may have pissed off Germany and France or whatever because he's saying, look, I'm not going to keep providing you defense, right? Step up to the plate. You guys make a lot of money, right? Your citizens are doing well. You carry the load, right? Carry the burden. So other than the EU, the Middle East definitely respects him. I know this from friends of mine that are from the Middle East and live there. But Boston Herald even reported that Trump's foreign policy results are speaking for themselves in spite of the derision of his many detractors. Far from creating a more dangerous and volatile world, Trump appears to be achieving a peace in regions of the world that few imagined was possible. So again, I mean, really since Jimmy Carter, right, in 1978, with the peace accord between Egypt and Israel, nobody's done anything. Nobody's been able to get anything done. Clinton tried at the David Summit. That fell apart. He then turned around and blamed Arafat for that. So it's just, I mean, again, it's unbelievable at what Trump has been able to do. I hate to say unbelievable because I don't like that word. It's been incredible what he's been able to do. Now, moving on, you may have heard that this morning, SEAL Team 6 pulled off a daring mission in Nigeria, securing the rescue of an American hostage, Philip Walton, who had been held captive there by a criminal gang that they feared would sell him to terrorists. So 6 captors, I think, were involved in that raid that they got. Fortunately for the rest of the world, 5 of them will soon be buried with their heads facing Mecca. So good try, guys, but our guys were fortunately took you out. Now, the Mary Claire, this is unbelievable. So Mary Claire, obviously being a far left magazine, right, pushing all this feminism and every social justice SJW thing slogan you can find, had a article titled "Change Starts Here." It was a list of Black candidates running for office in 2020. It was done by a lady named Rachel Epstein. No idea who she is. She could be a lovely woman, right? Could have an impeccable, trustworthy record. Problem is, Rachel skipped the day that she was supposed to report on the Black Republicans that are running for office this year. Now, granted, some of them got beat in their primaries, but her report doesn't mention one of them, not one. I guess she doesn't know who Kim Klacik is, who some PR firms have said probably had the best political ad they've ever seen run. She's running for the seat again that Elijah Cummings held in Maryland, so it's Maryland District 7. So, I mean, she spoke at the RNC. Well, she didn't speak at the convention, but there was a video of her speaking. Then you have Joe Collins, right? He's running to unseat Maxine Waters. At least he grew up and still lives in the district that he's running against, whereas Maxine Waters lives outside of it. He did a phenomenal ad. Benny Johnson is behind both of those ads. So he did an ad that is awesome. I'd go, if you haven't seen the Klacik and the Joe Collins ad, go look them up. They're groundbreaking. They hit hard. Then you have Burgess Owens in Utah, who's a former NFL player. He spoke at the RNC as well. And Lacey Johnson, who's running against Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, those are all congressional seats. John James is running for Senate in Michigan, and then Angela Stanton King here in Atlanta. And she's a proud beneficiary of Trump's prison reform and the First Step Act. So what seems to be the typical knock from the left, right, is that the GOP is racist, and they always point to DC and look, you don't have any elected officials. Oh, you've got, and Tim Scott has been called, oh, you got the token black Tim Scott, right? And that's racist as it comes, but that's what you get from the left. But once you look at the elected officials, what's interesting is that most of these hits against Republicans for not having more black representatives is kind of void of common sense. They forget that the representatives come from the districts that are gerrymandered to have representatives who appeal to them, who look like them, who, kind of have their own, it's a neighborhood, right? So the neighborhood is made up of a group of people, and the representatives usually resemble that. So whether it's ideology or race. So you don't see a lot of Latino representatives coming from a mostly black populated district and vice versa. So if you use their logic, right? So if two black representatives are running in a black populated district and they choose the Democrat, does that mean that that those other blacks are racist against the GOP person? Or do they just say, look, I prefer the Democrat, right? Logic would tell you they just prefer the policy of the Democrat. So if Burgess Owens, right, and this is what will be key, right? So now Burgess Owens is running in Utah against a white man, right, a white person. If he loses that district, right, if he loses that race, does that mean that the Democrats are racist? Because Burgess is black, they're voting for a white person. So based on the logic of the left, absolutely. If it was vice versa, if Burgess Owens was the Democrat and the white gentleman that he was running against was one, then 100% you're racist, right? GOP's racist. Look, they won't even elect a black man. So is that the way it should be? Of course not, right? We vote on policy. We don't vote on what the skin color is of the person. You vote on what you want representing you, right? And I think that's why blacks are going to be going for a larger portion. I'm not saying he's going to win the majority of black Americans on the vote this year, but he is going to win a decent amount because especially younger black men see him. And LA Times wrote a horrible article about why black young men are attracted to Trump's toxic masculinity. It's just, it's incredible again what these people are doing. So they're basically demeaning a young black man who may say, look, man, I had a great job. I was working well. My friends were doing well. My family was doing well. I'm pro-life. I'm pro this or whatever. They basically try to destroy you and say, well, you like him because of his toxic masculinity, to demean him, right? That young black man. So it's atrocious what they're doing, but they're going to continue to do it, and they're going to get away with it because the left shuts their eyes. They don't see racism if it's coming from the left. They only see if it's coming from the right. You always hear this dog whistle. Oh, Trump, issued his dog whistle racist comment. Now, the interesting thing about dog whistles that most people should realize, but probably don't think about, right, and connect the dots, is who can hear a dog whistle? You go out to your front porch, you're going to call your dog, you blow the whistle. Who hears it? Only dogs, right? So if it's a racist dog whistle, then that means that the only people that can hear the dog whistle are racists. So if Trump is at a rally and he's issuing his racist dog whistle, I don't know any concern. I know none, no white supremacists anywhere. I've never met one. I don't know one. Nothing. And most people don't know one and couldn't tell you when they came across one either, unless it was at some rally they went to. Charlottesville, for example, is always brought up. But so if the only people that can hear a racist dog whistle are the racists, then why is it always on CNN, MSNBC, or the Jake Tappers when he's like, oh, you hear this, racist dog whistle from Donald Trump at his rally? Well, wait a minute. If you heard it, I didn't hear it. Who's the racist here? Because only a racist can hear the racist dog whistle. Only a dog can hear a dog whistle. So start to put these pieces of the puzzle together. It starts to make sense after a while. Start to connect the dots. Start to realize which side is actually the racist side, and I can go into a long history of going back to from the founding all the way through the political parties, through Jim Crow laws, everything, Civil War. It'll blow your mind. If you want to look into it, start with Carol Swain. You can look up Thomas Thomas Sowell, Larry Elder, Walter Williams. They walk you all through it. It's easy. You always get the parties flipped retort, which is ludicrous on its face, and it's been debunked. I've debunked it. It's incredible. But if you want to go and look it up, it is eye-opening for you to see how the parties moved from their beginning and which side has always embraced, as Alan West says, the pro-life, pro-family, right, pro-worker mentality, which has been on the Republican side. So now, moving on really quickly, we'll get into what's good news for Democrats. A guy named Robert Epstein, or Richard Epstein, at stopbigtechnow.com. He was one back in 2016 who analyzed all the algorithms that were being used by big tech to push you to where they wanted you to go when you do a search engine. So he's been monitoring Facebook, Bing, Yahoo, and a couple others. Now, in 2017, when he testified in front of the Senate, Ted Cruz said, "Okay, based on your investigation and studies, you're saying that about 6 million votes were switched, were moved from from one side to the other, just based on the searches, not Russia, not getting any of that stuff, just the way the algorithms work." And he said, "No, that's not what I said. I said 10 to 12 million." So on the heels of that, he teamed up with Glenn Beck this year. And Glenn Beck provided him and his listeners, they did a money raise campaign for him. So Epstein went out and invested in with about 600 field agents. He said he'll have close to 700, 800 here by election day. But what they were doing is they were given the right to look over basically the shoulders of the Facebooks and Bings and Googles to determine look at their algorithms, how they're collecting this data, how they're pushing people to where they want them to go. And he's appalled that they're allowed to get away with it, but is seemingly gleeful because the votes that he's seen shift are moving in his direction. He's a leftist. He wants to see the progressive liberals win. So he was asked by Glenn Beck, he said, "Well, what happens after the election?" He said, "Well, if the Democrats are swept in," and they will be, according to him, he said they will be swept into D.C., was his quote, and that these investigations that are looking into this will be swept under the rug. So he's angry about that, yet he's happy that the group that's going to get swept in are going to win. So, I kind of take, I don't know, I'm kind of opposed to what he's talking about, right? I take issue with it. But what he said was what he's seen is approximately 15 million votes have shifted. And this is all thanks to big tech. So again, going back to what we talked about earlier with the Senate meeting with Dorsey and Facebook and the Google guy, is they don't care. They know they're going to get away with it, so they don't care, right? You did see Twitter restore the New York Post Twitter feed yesterday, so now they're allowed to post again, amazingly, right? So anyway, we'll see how this whole censorship thing works out after the election. If Trump wins, it's going to probably get worse. If the left wins, it's just everything's going to get swept under the rug, and it's going to just speed up, right? And people like us here at American New Clothes, we're going to get shut down or censored or whatever. Many guys are already being demonetized and had their pages shut down. So it's only going to speed up, but that's a progressive, fascist, cultural Marxist agenda. So now moving on to the polls. Yeah, poll results in Arizona. On Thursday, I reported to you that I think Arizona was up by about 90,000 votes, or I'm sorry, 55,000 votes. They led in early voting. As of yesterday, it was down to 25,000. So I refreshed the screen this morning. It's still about 25,000. So what's interesting is that they hold a 7-point advantage over GOP in ballots returned. And there's about 900,000 early ballot requests left outstanding. So if they keep chipping away as they have from 55,000 down to 25,000, it was 90,000 on Monday, then it's going to be a long day for Democrats in Arizona. Maricopa County is now turned red in party ballots cast. So if it stays red, then generally the entire state stays with that color as well. So if you win Maricopa, you win Arizona. So if the GOP remains ahead in the counts, they'll be ahead and win Arizona. If they lose Arizona, it's a big blow to Trump's chances, obviously. Looking at Florida, Florida is now a Democrat plus 97,000 as far as ballots come back. We don't know how these people are voting. We're just going on the ballots that have come in by party. But they've cut into that lead from Thursday by 50,000. It was about 136,000 as of Thursday. It's down to 97,000 now. according to pollsters that were showing what Hillary's lead was in 2008 or 2016, rather, going into the poll was about 88,000. Some have said 96,000. So if you're inside of that, given the massive push by Democrats to get out the vote early, it should be a major sweep in Florida for Republicans. What they're also seeing is a lot of the Republican or the Democrat-held congressional seats there are really, really getting worried that the Republicans are coming in and the Republican vote is coming in to switch parties and go to Republicans. So it'd be interesting to see if the Democrats can hold on to seats there. But you're now seeing that across the country. You're seeing seats that were used to be solidly, I shouldn't say solidly blue, but that went blue in the last couple of elections. Now they're pouring the DNC's pouring a bunch of money into those races. So they're getting a little bit nervous that they may lose the House. I did see a projection today that said that they see the House flipping to Republican by 22 seats, which that means I think they've got to win 47 seats or something like that, I believe, to take a 22 seat tally. So that would be extremely impressive. And despite what the media is telling you that all this early voting and 87 million votes, it actually still is on par for 2016. So if there's supposed to be this get out the vote campaign and the party that needs people coming to the polls to push them over is the Democrats, if we stay on par with 2016, that favors Republicans. So, and I'll end with this. Based on all this election stuff, as we near election day, many cities are already seeing their businesses board up their storefronts. They're being asked not to. DC mayor said, please don't board up or whatever. But they're doing it anyway. So from Rodeo Drive to Brickell Avenue, from Buckhead in Atlanta here to Queen Anne in Seattle, businesses are shutting down. Businesses are boarding up their doors. So one would think, if Biden is set to win by, what is it now, 18 points, right? What's he up by? It seems to grow every day. Probably up on a Fox News poll, I think he was up by like 18 or 20, right? Which is just ridiculous. But anyway, if he's up by that much, then why is the Democrat militia of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, why are they going? Wouldn't they be happy they're going to win? So why not just go peacefully into the night and be like, yeah, dude, we won. This is great. Why are they going to act like their team just won the national championship, or Lakers won the world championship, and go out and burn and loot and destroy everything? So if you're going to see the storm, right, or you're going to storm the streets and riot and loot and burn stuff to the ground, and the nights after that, who's going to be doing that? It's not going to be Trump supporters. So don't kid yourself into thinking that Trump supporters are going to go out and do all this stuff. So the violence is going to be coming from the left, which tells you one thing: if they already know what's coming, right, and they're and you had Kamala Harris even say back, on Stephen Colbert's show months ago that this rioting, this protesting is going to continue on, right? And she was happy about it. It's going to continue on no matter who, win or lose, right? After election day, it's going to continue, which tells you they control these rioters, right? So you have to look into and start connecting dots as to who's funding this. I mean, half these people look like they're unemployed. If they're unemployed, how are they going out every night in Portland for 100 straight nights now and doing this stuff? So you have to look at the party that's supporting this stuff, encouraging this stuff, and endorsing this stuff. And now Antifa just listed all the cities that they're planning to go to on one of their Twitter feeds this morning, and to prepare. And it's a list of probably 60 to 70 towns and cities. Here in Georgia, Griffin. Why Griffin? I don't know, but they're choosing Griffin. So before you go and vote on Tuesday, keep in mind what we covered today. For example, the nuns being doxxed, right? Just peaceful Christian ladies being doxxed by a far left loon. You've got Tony Bobulinski and the Hunter laptop corruption story being buried by mainstream media. You got big tech censorship of people like us here at ANC coming up, right? That's what's going to happen. You get the censorship of people like us. You got a party that wants more lockdowns, harsher mandates, right? Coming on Hyde, they're going to dictate to you what you can and can't do, despite a 1.4% IFR from a man-made virus, mind you. And if you're okay with your friends and neighbors being harassed, if they were Trump supporters, if that's the America you desire, then absolutely go pull it for President Kamala Harris. They introduced her yesterday in her Texas event as the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris. So don't kid yourself thinking that Joe Biden, that wasn't a Freudian slip. Don't kid yourself thinking that it's going to be Joe Biden who's going to be sworn in January. But I'll end on a positive note. So the way I look at things, and the way I hope you do, is we're all one race. We're born from the same universal force. There are more good people than bad in the world. Most of us care for our neighbor and want to uphold, right, the values that we hold for them. and to the best that we can, love our neighbors ourselves. So go peacefully into this night and remember that God granted us a provincial blessing when we were founded. And the idea of America was one built on faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. So God bless you. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you for watching.